3 days out from the NBA draft, and it does not feel like the draft board is going the Jazz way. What does it mean? Who are they choosing from? Our local experts give you the breakdown on all of them next on Locked on Jazz. Bum, 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. Today's show is going to be awesome. We're going to look at where the draft board is going and then look what our choices are as the Utah Jazz at 10, at 29, maybe even at 32. And we have the local experts from our local teams plus our NBA draft experts breaking down all of these players and giving you their insight on the show. Plus, Kevin Pelton's numbers are completely backwards to where the draft is looking, and we'll look at that as well on this Monday edition on Draft Week. It's Christmas week. I love Draft Week of the NBA. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps and on YouTube. Please follow, hit subscribe, thumbs up throughout the show, please, or likes when you have various players we're talking about. If you like the player, hit the like button. We all see it. We'll know. Chat room available on YouTube. You can also hit me on X. Thanks very much for being part of the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, making every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but the summer, FanDuel still has all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer. In fact, game 7 tonight, I think both teams are minus 110. All right. So ESPN just came out with their mock, and the draft board is not totally going the way I think Jazz fans want it to go. We had our big draft before I went on break, and huge thanks to Leaf Tulane. The episode Friday with Tony Jones was amazing. Leaf did such a great job all week long, mixing players he might want, NBA, Trey Murphy or Patrick Williams. I listen to all the shows, as well as just kind of breaking down the players, and he's such a good draft expert. He's far better than I am on a bunch of this stuff. I'm going to try to have Leaf on tomorrow so he and I can go back and forth kind of as our last final Tuesday edition before a Wednesday. Also hoping to host a Reddit AMA for Jazz fans on the Utah Jazz subreddit on Tuesday at some point, trying to decide what time right now. So that's the plan here. So a bunch of stuff going on for you coming up. All right. Our finals, Cody Williams beat NikolaTopic 51% to 48%, like a very, very close vote between Cody Williams and NikolaTopic. So it does look as though Topic is going to be available. It does not feel as though Cody Williams can be available. The top of the draft, top 7 seem to be the same guys. Now, if we could have a draft night surprise. Dalton Connect still stuns me. He's going to go top 7. Otherwise, the rest of the guys are there. ESPN's latest mock draft has Rob Dillingham, the small point guard out of Kentucky, who Leafs very high on. Tony Jones was not as high on, is number 8. And then Cody Williams goes 9 to Memphis. And that leaves the Jazz with a choice of 4 players in most people's mind. Devin Carter, point guard out of Providence. Salune, the youngest player in the draft out of France, I believe. 6'8", good body, thick body, big body. And showing some signs in some big playoff games recently. You heard Leaf talk about that a lot. Ron Holland, who is the G League Ignite number 2 high school player in the country, who then had a not great G League Ignite year, did not show a lot of touch around the rim, nor did he show any shooting ability. And then, or NikolaTopic. So let's turn to guys who know it better than I do and get the breakdown on those players. Let's start. We're going to it's a lot of Leaf here again, but this is our draft. And then some other guys. Here's Andy Patton on Devin Carter. Andy Patton hosts Locked on College
Providence
Basketball.
point guard Devin Carter is perhaps the most versatile guard in this entire draft class. I'm Andy Patton, the host of the Locked on College Basketball podcast. Carter is a 6'3" guard who did a little bit of everything last year for Kim English and the Friars. Armed with an elite 6'8" wingspan, Carter is a high-level defender and rebounder for his position, who averaged just under 20 points per game last year while posting elite defensive numbers and shooting about 38% from three. Carter's length and defensive chops are reminiscent of a pair of Boston guards Drew Holiday and Derek White, and while that's a tough ceiling, it is within reach for the versatile guard. For more on Devin Carter, the Big East, and all things college basketball, check out the Locked On College Basketball Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts.
So I watched Carter a little bit more last night, knowing it's clear he's going to be on the board at 10 for the Jazz. I mean, there could be a surprise. Obviously, he could go to San Antonio at 8 or Memphis. I doubt it at 9 with Marcus Smart and Ja Morant. He does understand the game beautifully, snakes the pick and roll, plays the game in that sense. He does play really hard, which I love as a skill. He is physical. He does defend. There's a lot to like out of Devin Carter. The first time I watched Devin Carter, if you go back about 3 weeks ago, is the show where I was like, this draft is not that bad. I'm watching these guys and they're fine. So Devin Carter is legit. The question on Carter a little bit is, as Leaf talked about all week, he shot well last year, but he didn't shoot well in prior years at South Carolina. And so is that real, or did it just come together? But I do think you put together play hard, good understanding of the game, good understanding of how to play the pick and roll, physical. I want guys, we need some toughness. I think that matches pretty well. So that's really what it feels like our first choices. Let's go to the young Frenchman, Salune, who Leaf tells us a little bit about.
Tidjane Salune played at Cholet Basket in France and is a hot topic in draft circles, and deservedly so, as he might have the most potential in the NBA draft. I'm Leaf Toen of the Locked On NBA Big Board, and here's what's to know about Tidjane. He's a 6'9", 205-pound wing who's only 18 years old and has played his best basketball late into the season and into the playoffs, leading Cholet to an upset quarterfinal win, hitting big shot after big shot to score 19 points in a playoff game. He averaged 10 points and 4 boards on the season, but just one look at the film and you're quickly convinced of his ability to translate to and eventually thrive in the modern NBA because he's huge, plays with tremendous hustle, and his shot inspires faith despite decent shooting numbers. Another thing I love about Salune is he does not shy away from the moment, as many youngsters and growing shooters do, and he can pair that with the athletic traits that bode well for defensive rebounding as he matures. For more on Tidjane Salune, listen to Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
So the thing on Salune's, the body's impressive. Like, there's a bunch of young kids, and even, Rosh Hashanah or Bazulis, I'm not sure their bodies are as impressive as Salune's body is, and how he's just thick and strong and moves well. And you'd have to know, though, he's super, super young. The next one to look at that we've talked about in this group of the four comes down is NikolaTopic. And Topic is the one who tore his ACL. He's out of Serbia, 6'6" guard. Here's what Leaf said about him.
NikolaTopic, a Serbian guard who plays for Red Star in Belgrade, Serbia, is an interesting player, and it will be interesting to see where he lands due to tearing his ACL recently, but he does boast unique skills as a big point guard who thrives in the pick and roll. I'm Leaf Toen of Locked On NBA Big Board, and Topic, to me, if everything goes perfectly, could have the most desirable skill set of the draft as an offensive weapon who will distribute and score out of the pick and roll using his 6'6", 200-pound frame. Topic averaged nearly 15 points and 6 assists this season and demonstrated that skill set with an 89th percentile pick and roll operating ability, which is classified as excellent percentage. And then his shot becomes the question. Is it good enough to punish the defenses that dare him to shoot or go under screens, as he's a crafty driver to the basket who couples size and strength and creativity to finish off plays himself, despite lacking top-end speed nor elite top-end athleticism? Time will tell, and tune into Locked On NBA Big Board or on YouTube or your favorite podcasting app to hear more thoughts on Topic.
So when I first dug into Topic, I was pretty excited. And the idea that he tore his ACL and they might slip to 10 felt like a really good idea. Felt like it was a great break for the Jazz. We even did a show on it. I have to admit, the more I've watched him, the more concerned I am about the shot. It's really flat. He's never shot it well. And he's got to stretch it out a little bit. The European line is much closer to the NBA line than the college line, so it's not as big a deal for him. But it is concerning to me. The fact is, if he can't shoot it, then it's just not going to work. Like, all the other skills fall apart if he can't shoot it, because then everyone's going under the picks on him. He doesn't have the room. That's a bigger concern to me than the ACL. And speaking of guys who can't shoot, this is maybe one of the most interesting, because everything about this looks great. Ron Holland's body is amazing. G League Ignite last year was the number 2 high school player in the country, gets in a terrible situation. The number 1 player coming in the country was Isaiah Collier, and the number 2 was Ron Holland, and they both got into just terrible situations. USC was a mess, and so was the whole G League Ignite, to the point in which they canceled it. But Ron Holland, 6'8", 210, he looks exactly like Harrison Barnes when he runs. The problem is he shot 24% from 3. The only guy who's ever come close to shooting that from 3 and then turning out to be viable maybe is Jonathan Kuminga, and I'm not sure he is a viable shooter yet. Here's what Leaf said about Ron Holland.
Ron Holland of the G League Ignite plays with incredible energy and is a very good athlete who figured his way into scoring nearly 20 a game in the G League, despite a poor shooting season. I'm Leaf Tulane of Locked on NBA Big Board, and Ron Holland is a live wire athlete who measures in at over 6'6" without shoes and has the capacity to impact the game defending the perimeter early in his career. But despite entering the year ranked at the top of the draft boards, his lack of offensive polish is scaring teams away. His upside as an 18-year-old who just scored 20 per game in the G League, adding 7 boards as a plus athlete makes him a polarizing prospect because he may boast one of the higher ceilings, but if his offense does not translate, Holland reminds me some of Josh Okogie. On the other end, on the higher end, he reminds me some of RJ Barrett, but a right-handed version. Holland will be divisive with his swing skill being shooting. For more on Ron Holland, tune into Locked on NBA Big Board, where you can listen to recent episodes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, so those are the 4 that looks like the Jazz will be choosing from in our NBA mock draft we just did on Locked On. That's where we had to make our choice. Devin Carter, NikolaTopic, Tidjane Salune, Ron Holland. Where are you going? Put in the chat room right now on YouTube. Hit me on X at DLock09 if you're listening on the audio version. Where do you go at that point? I got to say, that doesn't feel like the draft board's breaking the way I'd want necessarily. But on the other end, those are basic 10th pick. That to me is not a draft that's worse than any other draft. And maybe it's just Cody Williams is not available is all I'm really saying. Because I don't know if I think Dalton Connect sliding to 10 is a great thing. So I don't know who necessarily the player is that's sliding to 10 that would excite me that much. My feeling on that one is that positional size, the Jazz draft Ron Holland and hope they can turn him into a shooter. The 3 assists and 3 steals a game jump out to me on the Ron Holland tape. The concern to me is obviously the shooting. The other one is that when he got beat defensively, I did not see him slide his feet back into position, but that might be because he was going up against grown men instead of college players. Topic's shooting scares me. Carter, all good. No problem there if you do that. And Salune, I probably just don't know enough, but the body physically at 18 years old, and if you have time, might be there. I am nervous on players that don't hit the Gladwellian 10,000 hours or the Erickson 10,000 hours. I like players who have played and been in the game for a long time, and I'd have to know more about Tidjane Salune's background and whether or not he played enough. There is one other player that I think we should consider at that point. I'll share with you who he is next because I really like him. And some thoughts on what we might have at 29-32 range as well from our draft experts. It's all as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Chevy truck is Americana. The Murdochs are 80-plus years in Utah. It is a draft combination that is worthy of the number 1 pick. Whether it's the Colorado or the Silverado in the truck lineup, whether it's the Blazer and the Trailblazer, the Equinox and the great SUV lineup, or the Trax, or even the Volt, their electric car that's gotten rave reviews, Chevy has it rolling. It is Americana, and it is the Murdochs. It's located at Woods Cross, also in Logan. If you're going to stop by, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can make sure you get your VIP experience. That's dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. eBay Motors doing all the great things for it to make sure that your ride or die is alive and happy. eBay Motors, I mean, you're talking about selection. You're talking about absolute greatness with the incredible amount of selection, which makes sure that your car is always taken care of. And there's nothing better. I mean, it is so intimidating to go to some of these sites and then you end up sitting there and you're like, how do I know whether it's going to fit? How do I not know it's going to fit? Well, that's where the eBay Motors guaranteed fit comes into play for you to make sure that you get the little check mark, and it tells you whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust skits, LED headlights. It makes sure that you have the eBay guaranteed fit on the 122 million parts. That way you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts and prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Bring home the huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. ebaymotors.com. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Second listen, NBA Big Board or Locked On NBA, getting you ready for the NBA draft today. So when you're ready to finish with this one, go grab the next one. Plus, if you missed any of last week's episodes on Locked On Jazz, Leaf Tulane and did a great job. Friday episode with Tony Jones was great. All right, I have a personal favorite in this draft. I really like Duke's Jared McCain. And the reason Jared McCain is sliding is because he's a little small, and because of the fact that he not only is he a little small, but he is a little small, and he did not play point guard for Duke, and he's going to have to play point guard in the NBA because he's 6'2". And maybe I'm just deciding that he'll be fine. But when I look at McCain's numbers, 87th percentile in transition, okay, that's a sign that you really understand. On 100 opportunities, not a lot of isolation, but decent chance. 70% rim potential is very good for a 6'2" guard. 93 percentile in the pick and roll. So he ran 69 pick and rolls last year, and he was in the 93rd percentile. The only guy in the draft who's better than that is Baylor Shireman, who's in the 95th, Terrence Shannon, or 99th. Terrence Shannon, who's in the 95th percentile. Those are the only guys better than Jared McCain. He's the third best guard in pick and roll, and you're telling me he can't play point guard? I don't see that. I see Jared McCain. If the Jazz go Devin Carter, I might go Jared McCain. Carter's a little bigger, but he's also 2 years older. And Devin McCain and Jared McCain can really, really shoot it. So he's the third best pick and roll guard. He's in the 80th percentile in spot up. And the other thing you got to be able to do is dribble. If you're going to play point guard in the NBA, you got to be able to shoot off the bounce. Okay, well, he's the best off-the-bounce shooter in the draft. The only guy who's better is Reed Shepherd at the 99th percentile. Then Terrence Shannon Jr. is in the 91st percentile. And Jared McCain is in the 81st percentile in dribble off the bounce. So there's a few guys that are better. 91st percentile, KJ Simpson. Bub Carrington, 83rd percentile. Hunter Salas, who pulled out of the draft. Rob Dillingham's right there. But he's basically the same as Rob Dillingham, and everyone says that's Rob Dillingham's super skill. He's better. Or right on the same level. His effective field goal percentage on off-the-bounce shooting was 49%, and Rob Dillingham's was 49%. Rob Dillingham took 117 shots. Jared McCain took 103. Here's what our Locked On Blue Devils host says about Jared McCain.
Duke Blue Devils freshman sensation Jared McCain might be the best shooter in this NBA draft. I am Alex Dono from Locked On ACC. While he doesn't have the best length at 6'2", McCain makes up for so much of that with his high basketball IQ, his sharp shooting, and his crafty finishing at the rim. Shot 41.4% from beyond the arc last year, played over 31 minutes per game, averaging 14.3 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal per contest. McCain, by the way, he's got 3 million followers on TikTok, so he's multi-talented, but he's all business when it comes to basketball. That's his number one priority. The ACC All-Rookie and All-ACC Honorable Mention can help an NBA team immediately with his shooting. A common NBA comp for him is Seth Curry. For more on Jared McCain and all things ACC, follow and subscribe to Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
No question the Seth Curry comp is not the most exciting one out there. But I think that's because he's small and he's not quite a true point guard. We'll see. That's just a personal favorite. We'll see over time whether I have any idea what I'm talking about or not. At the 29th pick, if you're following the ESPN mock drafts, it looks like the Jazz will have a choice between, hopefully, Baylor Shireman, who I think many of us love, including myself, and Bobby Klintman. Those are the two players they have taken. There's a few other names of interest. So let's go to what ESPN has the Jazz taking at 29 in Baylor Shireman, who you just heard me talk about a moment ago. His numbers, he's old, and the old guys have a tendency to skew the numbers, as we've talked about over the years, but he's 6'7". He's 24 years old. His transition percentile is good. His rim finishing is not. His pick and roll ball handling is in the 99th percentile on 77 attempts. He's also 3 years older than like most of the guys he's playing. His spot up was in the 60th percentile. His catch and shoot unguarded in the 88th, and his off the bounce shooting was really good at 87th. Here's Isaac Shade on Baylor
Shireman, Creighton. He's one of the best shooters in the draft, looking to make his mark, but he's got more than that to offer. I'm Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. Shireman's 23 years old. He's a 6'7", 205-pound left-handed shooting guard small forward. He really took things to the next level last year for Creighton, 18.5 points, 9 boards, and 3.5 assists. Combine that with his ability to shoot 38% on 8.3 attempts, and he's an intriguing look. Unanimous first-team All-Big East last year. Teams need shooting, and Baylor Shireman's got it. Plus, his quick release and high release will allow him to get it off at the NBA level. But even when the shot's not falling, his facilitation and rebounding will allow him to contribute. His length is adequate, but his size and strength are there. His athleticism is lacking, so defending will be difficult, but Luka's out here making it. Give me Sam Hauser as a comp. For more on Baylor Shireman and all things college basketball, follow and subscribe to Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts.
I watched the Providence Creighton game yesterday, Devin Carter, Baylor Shireman. And what I really liked about Baylor Shireman is how much he was just in the mix on everything. You know, rebound, tapping it away from the big guy from Providence to keep it alive for his guys. Screening out, drawing a foul by posting somebody up. Just moving off the ball. Creighton's offense is really nice in the way it moves. I liked his activity. I do like guys who will touch people. Like, it's one of the first things I look at in scouts. Like, is he willing to make contact with someone? So very impressive on all the little things on him. Passes one guy removed. He's a really nice player. Bobby Klintman's an interesting one. He was in the draft before, if his name sounds familiar to you. And then he pulled out of the draft. Instead of going back to college, he went overseas. And Leaf Tulane gives a breakdown to him. He's who ESPN has the Jazz taking with the 32nd pick.
Bobby Klintman, who last played for Cairns Taipans in the NBL and previously played for Wake Forest, is an intriguing player as he's 6'10" with a sweet shooting stroke. I'm Leaf Tulane of Locked On NBA Big Board, and Klintman figures to factor into the late first round, early second round discussion as the Swedish big boasts a coveted skill set in the modern NBA. As a player who can be a plus-size wing who shoots it confidently. Klintman averaged 10 points and 5 boards for the Taipans while shooting 81% from the free throw line. I believe he could play the 3 if his foot speed improves a little bit as a lateral mover, as well as playing his more natural position as a stretch 4. I don't know if he can immediately be an impact player for a team with winning aspirations, likely picking in his range, but Klintman can be cultivated into a valuable rotational player as he gets more comfortable with NBA athletes. For more on Bobby Klintman, subscribe to Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
So the thing on Bobby Klintman is he's 6'10", 220. Like, at some point, you just don't get guys like that very often. And so if Klintman's available at 32, you might have to just take him because you don't get guys that are 6'10", 220. Like, you took Taylor Hendricks at 9 because he was 6'10", 220. So if you have a guy at 32 that's available, that's probably worth doing it. Another little guard that I really like is KJ Simpson. Probably too rich for 32, but I love when I watched Cody Williams. This is the guy who jumps out to me. Here's our Locked On Buffs host on KJ Simpson.
The king of clutch himself, KJ Simpson out of Colorado, is in the NBA draft and will make one team extremely happy. I'm Kevin Borba, host of Locked On Buffs, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about KJ Simpson. He's a 21-year-old guard that was named to 2 All-Pac-12 conference teams, one of which was a first-team conference nod this past season after he averaged almost 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists per game, while also showing the ability to be as clutch as they come. He has ice in his veins. He sent those Florida Gators packing in the NCAA tournament with his game-winning shot. His NBA comparison has to be Fred VanVleet. He's an undersized guard that's fearless and will shoot any shot that's open. Even if it's not, he's going to find his shot and he's going to get to the rim, shows no fear, and does whatever is needed for the team. He is someone who could lead an NBA team's second unit right away and eventually could be a starter. If you want more information on KJ Simpson and all things Colorado, Follow and subscribe to Locked On Buffs on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, those are the players that are floating around there. There's one other that I would consider that I kind of think we might actually need to trade up, to really consider trading up to go get. I'll share that with you. Plus, Kevin Pelton's numbers are completely backwards to the NBA draft. We'll talk about what that means coming up here as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, making every moment more, having a great time, making the games a little bit more fun, getting into the enjoyment of all of it. Make sure you get into the action with our friends over at FanDuel. And at FanDuel.com/LockedOn, we've got a special deal for you right now coming your direction. Here's what we've got for you. If you want to get involved, whether it's you're doing NBA, maybe you're doing Stanley Cup tonight. As I mentioned, I think both teams are -110. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. All customers will get a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most of the summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And I want to check and make sure I'm right on this. I think both teams tonight in Game 7, fairly incredible, are both at a -110. Is that right still? Now the Panthers are now -113 and Edmonton's -106. This is pretty incredible. Goal scorers you can bet as well. Connor McDavid's +160 to get a game. The spread tonight is Florida -1.5. So Florida's actually favored at home, Game 7, to recover from this all taking place. Cubs and Giants playing today as well. That's always fun, at least for those of us. It's all at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. All right. Kevin Pelton does an amazing job with the numbers every year. Oh, by the way, the one other player that I think you have to kind of revisit here at some point is Isaiah Collier. Isaiah Collier is now at 24 in the mock drafts. He was the #1 pick player in the country out of high school. He's got a unique skill set in his ability to get downhill. He's incredibly strong and athletic. His shot is ugly. I mean, like, probably haven't recovered from literally watching him like bank a 3 airball bank. Like he can miss by a lot. His range is wild how much he misses by. With that said, boy, that's a base skill. It's pretty special. Body, speed, explosion, driving, beating you off the bounce. Woo! Little small, not as big as everybody thought he was. But if you're the Jazz and you have 29 and 32 and Collier's floating around 24, do you need to trade up to go get him? Now, what's interesting is if Baylor Shireman's really going to be there at 29, then maybe not. Because I like Baylor Shireman an awful lot. But if suddenly Shireman's going to go and you kind of know that, if you leave the night with Isaiah Collier and you've used your bottom 2 assets to go get that, that's a pretty good flyer to me. Like, it defies a lot of stuff. Like, we leave with Ron Holland and Isaiah Collier and we just decide to go get the #1 and 2 high school players in the country and neither of them can shoot. We better hope their Evan Brads and our player development's good because you need guys who can shoot. But it'll be interesting. All right, Kevin Pelton's numbers. On the top, he has Reed Shepherd 1, Donovan Clingan 2, Zach Edey 3, Jonathan Furpe out of Kansas from Australia is 4, Jacoby Walter is 6, and then Jared McCain, who I like so much, is 9. Devin, of our choice of our players we just had a minute ago, Carter's 21, Holland's 25, Topic is 37, Salune's 34. On Kevin Pelton, ESPN's number guru, good friend of the program's number system. Here's what's wild. Pelton's entire number system is backwards to the draft. Stephen Castle's 25, Rob Dillingham's 23, Ross O'Shea is 53. Salune, I just mentioned, is at 34. Mazzulla's at 49. Topic is at 37. Holland at 25. Collier at 29. Cody Williams at 51. Connect at 76. If you take the top picks of this draft, Rosh O'Shea's likely going 1. He's 53. Clingan may go, we'll see who goes 2, but Donovan Clingan's up there. He is number 2 on the draft board. Okay, so that one matches at least. Reed Shepherd goes number 3. He's number 3. Castle goes 4. He's 25th. Bazulius goes 20, is 49, goes 5. 6, I think they're mocking a Connect, or I'm forgetting somebody in that mock. Checking to make sure who I've forgotten here. No, 6 is Connect at 76 on the numbers. Donovan Clingan. Oh, number 2 is Alex Sars. Number 4 on the numbers. Klingan's number is 7. Dillingham, who is 23, goes 8. Cody Williams, 51 on the numbers. So the top 10 picks, other than Reed Shepherd and Donovan Clingan, are not the players that the numbers are pumping out for Kevin Pelton. If you go to ESPN and read Pelton's piece, he has his past numbers success and how it's done, and he shares where the system has been successful or unsuccessful in the past. And he's been pretty successful on this. This is why this draft is wacky, and why I also think there could be a bunch of things that go off that. The other one I would tell you is that's interesting on this is that when you when you look at this, the Jazz are one of the teams that have drafted to the most value of his number system, top 5. So you wonder whether that impacts the Jazz a little. Pelton has his 2019 numbers up there. He's got some mistakes there. He shows it. He's also got some successes in there. And you wonder, on the players and he has his 2018s up there. So you can check it out. He's pretty open to show like where his number rank is, where his system is, and where he thought it was going to work or not work. He's got 5-6 years of it. So check it out all on his article. It's pretty interesting to see. And there's definitely been some misses. Dragan Bender, who we loved. We're up there. Some other misses along the way, and some other massive successes along the way. All right, that is Locked On Jazz today. Hopefully Reed Shepherd. Hopefully Leaf Tulane will join us tomorrow. We'll break that down. Tuesday, AMA Reddit coming your direction as well. So thank you very much for being a part of the show today. Give me your pick. Again, if you haven't already, put it in the chat room. Carter, Salune, Holland, or Topic. If that's the pick for the Jazz, who are you taking? Give me your thoughts. Thumbs up which guy you like the most. That is Locked On Jazz. Today's edition brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Thanks so much for tuning in. We now send you over to the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked On Sports Today.